Kirk Lippold, now, of course, the former USS Cole commander. And Commander, I'm looking at these developments and wondering how we respond. We've talked about maybe bringing tactical nuclear weapons to the Korean Peninsula to send a strong signal to the North, both the North Koreans and the Chinese, as if that would be provocative, as if anything Kim Jong-un's been doing hasn't been provocative. But what do you make of that?
Well, I think that, Neil, as Secretary Mattis and the President have both said, all options are on the table. If you're going to bring those weapons in, I think that we need to be much further down the road. At this point in time, I think there is still a large gap left for us to exercise diplomacy and especially economic measures. But I'm going to say it again and again and again. This is up to China, China, China.
But what if China can't control them? I know you and I have asked this as well, but I'm beginning to wonder now because again, North Korea seems to like embarrassing China, like it did over the weekend when the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping, was with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, and hours before we learned of this latest hydrogen bomb test, which obviously was awkward. So maybe China can't control them.
Well, Neil, I don't think China has done anything to indicate that they are even willing to control. They have made token cuts to their fuel, to coal and other things, but they really have not started to squeeze off the economic lifeline to North Korea to tell them that they need to cut it. I think they basically stop and they don't allow anything to come through. And at some point in time, if it calls for a maritime blockade, then that's going to be tantamount to an act of war, but it is a way for us to begin to start squeeze and work with it. I think China still has opportunity for them to begin to engage with North Korea and tell them they have got to back down on this. If they don't, the reality is, Neil, that we are looking at going and having an armed conflict on the Korean Peninsula that, God forbid, might even go nuclear, because there is no path except for conflict unless China engages to try and stop the North Korean thing. We cannot allow the proliferation of nuclear weapons offensively pointed at the United States or the rest of the world.
But, you know, the other solution we've come up with, Commander, as you know, is to punish the Chinese directly. Anyone who trades or does business with North Korea is on our you-know-what list, and that might send a message. Do you think it would?
Well, I think that's a big statement that right now overloads it a little bit. I think that the sanctions right now, if we're going to impose them against China, and I firmly believe that we should have comprehensive sanctions, need to be very targeted. They need to target the industries, the government, and the military that has aided and abetted the nuclear program surviving to this point and getting to this point. And in addition, we need to also understand that Iran is involved in everything the North Koreans are doing. They're learning from it, and if we don't control North Korea, the breakout will be measured in days, if not weeks, for Iran to have a nuclear weapon as well.
I'm wondering, too, about what signal is being sent in the meantime. In other words, if they get this capability, much as we feared the day coming when Pakistan would have that capability and now does, what happens when they do? Because at the rate things are going, they just might.
They just might, Neil, and I think what you're looking at is that China will literally, I think, go to the brink. They want to preserve that buffer zone around them. They already don't like the fact that the United States is deploying THAAD units, the Theater High Altitude Air Defense units, into South Korea.
Right.
But they're going to have to be pushed right to that brink, and if it comes to armed conflict, the Chinese at that point are going to realize their economy can't afford it. They can't afford it, because if the government has to go to war, the Communist Party will be out of power. They cannot sustain it.
I just worry about something accidental happening, you know, a missile that goes off course or lands on land, then all bets are off, you know.
Absolutely.
All right, Commander, very good seeing you even under these circumstances.